Hello everyone, welcome to the RISE series episode 1. In this series we'll be learning chemistry through tough and important questions. Okay, a mixed bag of all the chemistry of class 10, class 11, class 12 and your practical based knowledge will be taken here, and lot of interesting questions will be discussed right from the basic level of the NCERT to advanced level of JEE, as well as past year questions of NEET and other board important questions for your boards as well. Okay, all these questions hold fundamental value for your NEET and JEE as well, because most of them are past year questions. Even if they are not, they will improve your concepts, and for this last minute revision you need these questions to boost your chemistry. Okay, so your fundamental thing for this is just be with me throughout the video till the end. Learn the formulae and the reactions through the NCERT. Okay, and revise them as well, and then come and test yourself with the questions. As soon as the question comes, first pause the video and watch it, try it yourself, and then you can watch it if you are not getting it, or to tally it. Okay, let's begin for the first question. Alright, so this is a question from the structure of the atom. The question states, what are the frequency and wavelength of a photon emitted during the transition from N5 state to the N is equal to 2 state in the hydrogen atom? Okay, alright, let's begin. Now see, whenever we are given two N states, N is 2 and N is 5, two N's we are given, two orbitals. Basically this means, suppose it's your nucleus, this is the first shell, this is the second shell, third, fourth, fifth. So from here to here your electron is jumping, two shells. Okay, and to calculate wavelength, wave number, frequency for two shells, we use the Rydberg formula. This you have learnt in structure of the atom. Rydberg formula, which states that V dash, which is your wave number means 1 upon wavelength, is equal to just a second, yeah, it's equal to R, that is your Rydberg constant, 1 upon N1 square minus 1 upon N2 square. N1 and N2 are your transitions. Okay, this is your Rydberg formula, you have done it in the theory. So in this question your N1 is equal to 5 and N2 is equal to 2. It is not necessary that N1 has to be the smaller one. First one is N1, second one is N2. Okay, alright, so the value of R is 109,677. Okay, you need to learn this value of Rydberg constant, because in physics also it's being used. Alright, so let us solve this now. So this now will be your formula, will now go into this state. Just a second, there's a little hang here. Alright, okay, now from this formula what you can do is, you will be, after substituting these values, you will get the value of lambda. Okay, this will be your wavelength. Okay, after substituting N1 is equal to 5, N2 is equal to 2 and R is equal to 109677, you will get your lambda, and lambda will come approximately 434.2 nanometer, which you can just write as 434 nanometer on calculations. We will not be doing the calculations in this video, we will be testing the concepts. Calculations will take time and will waste your time here. You can do it for your practice. Okay, now once you have got the lambda as 434.2, you know another basic equation from your electromagnetic waves that you have studied is that your frequency nu is equal to C by lambda. This you have already done. Nu is equal to C by lambda is the basic equation we have done in electromagnetic wave studies. Okay, so now you can put this equation and you can write nu is equal to 3 into 10 power 8 by 434. This will be your frequency, 3 into 10 power 8 by 434, and this frequency will on calculation come out to be 6.91 into 10 to the power 14 hertz, and this will be your answer. This is using calculations you can do, which you will be able to calculate easily. The thing is that nu is equal to C by lambda, you already know this, nu is equal to C by lambda. So this is the formula that you need to keep in mind to calculate the values. Now this was the first method to do it. Another method is also there, which is preferably a shorter method. Okay, in fact, not a shorter method, you can prefer it for calculations. The method again is same. You will use Rydberg formula, but instead of using the Rydberg formula for wavelength, we will now use the Rydberg formula for energy. Okay, whenever there is the energy of transition, whenever an electron is moving from one state to another, there is a Rydberg formula to get the energy of transition as well, and that formula is energy of transition is equal to 2.18 into 10 power minus 18 upon 1 upon n1 square minus 1 upon n2 square. So whenever you take it for energy, the value of Rydberg constant changes to this 2.18 into 10 power minus 18. Okay, so now you can get the transition energy from this. Your energy expression will be 2.18 into 10 power minus 18 1 upon n1 square. N1 is your 5 square, that is 1 upon 25, minus 1 upon 2 square, that is 1 upon 4. And from this you can calculate the energy. On calculation, this energy will come out to be 4.58 into 10 power minus 19 joules. Okay, with the minus sign. Energy is always negative. The reason is that, I'll just explain this. Whenever you have a nucleus and you have an electron, the nucleus always puts attractive forces on these on the electron. Okay, attractive forces on the electron will be put by the nucleus, and to remove the electron from the attractive forces, work has to be done, and work done is negative. Okay, the electron and nucleus are bound by nuclear forces, and that is why work has to be done, and that is why this energy is negative. So you get the energy. Now you can use the formula for energy. Energy you already know from your structure of the atom formula is h nu. Okay, I'll make it a little neater. This box is untidy. Alright, let's make it neat. Energy you already know is your h nu. Okay, so what is your nu? Your frequency. You're finding the frequency first. E by h. So E by h is your nu. Okay, you can write it delta E also, because it's an energy of transition, as you wish. So your nu will become 4.58, which we calculated, into 10 power minus 19 upon h. H is Planck's constant. The value again to be remembered, 6.626 into 10 power minus 34 joules per second. Joule second is the value of Planck's constant. Okay, so please remember this value of Planck's constant. All right. Now what you can do simply is you will get the value of P, which I just told you before also what the value was, 6.91 into 10 to the power 14 hertz. Now you have got frequency. Now you use your frequency wavelength relation. Just a second. Yeah. So now after getting the frequency, you can use the frequency wavelength relation, that is lambda is equal to c by nu, because nu is equal to c by lambda. So this lambda will be 3 into 10 power 8 divided by your 6.91 into 10 power 14, and you calculate this, you will get this as 434 nanometer. You will get lambda. That's the answer. Okay, now because the electron is in this question going from one state to another, you can use both the Rydberg formulas. The Rydberg formula for wave number, from which you get the wavelength and then you get the frequency, or you use the Rydberg formula for energy, from which you get the frequency first using E is equal to h nu. This is the formula that Planck gave, E is equal to h nu, and from that you get frequency first, and then you use this formula to get your wavelength. That's it. Next, an aromatic compound A on treatment with aqueous ammonia and heating forms compound B. Okay, two compounds, which on heating further with bromine and KOH forms a compound C of molecular formula C6H7N. Write the structures and IUPAC names of ABC. We will also do the equations. Okay, alright. Now see, for these kinds of questions, sometimes we have so clear reactions that we can directly understand what it is. Always in word problems of organic, you are given one compound with the formula, and generally it is an aromatic compound. Whenever you have C6, mostly it has an aromatic compound. So the trick I'll tell you for this, the trick is C6H7N. what to do, I'll take a brighter color. What you do is, you know a benzene ring is C6H5. Of course, its benzene is C6H6, but it will be a substituted benzene. Substituted benzene will have C6H5. In place of one hydrogen, there will be a substituent. So first you make a C6H5, you draw a benzene. Okay, let me draw it using the line tool, because otherwise it won't be very neat. Okay, so this C6H5 now becomes your benzene. What do you have apart from C6H5? You have one more C, you have one more C. Okay, no C, you have N and you have 2H. 5 H's used, 7 are there, NH2. This is what is remaining. Put NH2. What do you get? This is aniline. Benzanamine is aniline. You got it? So your compound C becomes aniline. So this is the trick. Whenever you have the formula, C6H5 forms the benzene ring and the rest you substitute. You got the compound. Now compound B on heating with bromine and KOH forms compound C. So you already know that this reagent in amines context, the reagent Br2 in KOH is of the reaction Hofmann bromamide synthesis. Degradation. This is Hofmann bromamide degradation. That means you have an amide which is reacted in this reagent Br2 and KOH, and you get an amine with 1 carbon less. Okay, Br2 and KOH in context of amines is Hofmann bromamide, from which you get an amine from an amide with 1 carbon less. So that means this amine, the aniline which we have, has 6 carbons, C6. So that means this amide must have 7 carbons, C7. So can you draw C7 here? So we can draw a benzene ring. Okay, and another carbon has to be there. And what is the formula of an amide? CONH2. Okay, RCONH2. So C double bond O NH2. So what is this? This is a simple benzamide. Okay, why am I drawing the C extra? Because I have to make an amide with 1 carbon more so that I can get aniline which has 6 carbons. So the amide will have 7 carbons. So this is benzamide. You got the structure B also. Now come back to the question. Aromatic compound A. Okay, aromatic is given only as such. So you have the biggest hint in the question itself. Okay. So treatment with aqueous ammonia and heating forms compound B. That means this amide will be formed from another benzene compound because it is aromatic. Okay, it will be formed from another benzene compound. Just a second, this is a little space it's consuming. This is fine. Now this will be formed from another aromatic, that means benzene compound, from the reagent. The reagent that will be used is going to be ammonia, aqueous and heat. Now go back to the chapter of carboxylic acids and realize that you know this reaction RCOH, carboxylic acid, when heated with ammonia and heat forms a RC double bond O NH2 amide. Carboxylic acid can be converted to amide by heating in ammonia. Easily we get the amide. So this has to be a carboxylic acid with same carbons because carbons are conserved here. So which carboxylic acid can it be? 1 carbon here. It's simply going to be a benzoic acid. COOH, benzoic acid. Can you understand this? Why am I saying it has to be a benzoic acid? Because a carboxylic acid with heating with ammonia can form an amide, and the acid which has the same number of carbons as benzamide, because here carbons are conserved, is only a benzoic acid. So this has to be a benzoic acid. Okay, that's your compound A. So A is benzoic acid, B is benzamide, and C is aniline. I have told you the trick. Break the formula given to you and all the reactions will be cleared. Okay, so do it with the trick and you will definitely crack it. Okay, next question. Aluminum crystallizes in cubic close packed structure. Its metallic radius is 125 picometers. Okay. What is the length of each side of the unit cell? That's the first part. Okay. What is the length of each side of the unit cell is the first part, and the second part is how many unit cells are there in 1 centimeter cube. Centimeter cube means the volume of aluminum. That's the question. So for this, obviously this is a question from the solid state chapter. So we can use a simple logic here to solve this. Okay, we can use a simple logic to solve this. You already know whenever we are talking about a cubic close packed structure, we are talking about a CCP lattice. In CCP lattice Z, which is the number of atoms, is equal to 4. We know this. Second, your radius and side relation. Radius and side relation, A is the side, is equal to 2 root 2 R, where A is your side and R is your atomic radius. Okay, this formula we already know for this chapter, for this topic, that for CCP lattice, which is a cubic close packed structure, your A is equal to 2 root 2 R and number of atoms in unit cell is 4. Okay, so we can directly use A is equal to 2 root 2 R to solve this. Okay, we can directly use A is equal to 2 root 2 R to solve this. Isn't it? A is equal to 2 root 2 R, we can directly use to solve this. So what we can do is, your A, that is the side A, is equal to your 2 root 2, 2 into root 2 is 1.414 into R. R is 125. So 2.828 into 125, you will get the answer in picometers. I am not going to the calculation right now because that will consume time. Okay, and you will get the relation. So always the relation between atomic radius and edge length is always given in the formula of A is equal to root 2 R or A is equal to R, depending on which lattice we are taking. Next, how many unit cells are there in 1 centimeter cube of aluminum? Now another formula for this to remember is number of unit cells. If volume is given, A is equal to volume given upon volume of unit cell. This is simple unitary method, that number of something, if volume is given, will be equal to the volume of that thing. What happened? It just vanished. Alright, no problem. This board is acting very funny today. Alright. So volume of anything, number of unit cells, is always equal to volume of given substance upon volume of one unit cell. Volume of unit cell always is A cube because all unit cells are in the form of a cube, so the volume will always be A cube. A we have already calculated using the formula of 2 root 2 R, we already got A. So what you can do is number of unit cells will be 1 centimeter cube divided by your 2 root 2 R. That means 1 by 2 into 1.414 into R, that is 125. Okay, this you convert it into centimeter and you will get the number of unit cells. Okay, so the main thing is number of anything is given volume upon volume of one unit cell, from which we can get the number of unit cells. Alright, next question. Justify that the reaction copper oxide to copper plus copper sulfide to copper plus sulfur dioxide is a redox reaction. Identify the species oxidized or reduced. Also identify the oxidant and reductant. Oxidant and reductant is simply oxidizing agent and reducing agent. Okay. So let's do this one. Now see, for redox reaction you need to just show us one substance is oxidized and one substance is reduced. You can simply apply the oxidation number formula and prove that this reaction is a redox reaction. So let's take the oxidation number of copper in each of the following and we'll be able to prove it. So in copper oxide, the oxidation number, how to find? Copper will be X. So 2x plus oxygen, the oxidation state of oxygen is -2, charge is 0, is equal to 2x is equal to 2, x is equal to 1. So here your oxidation state is 1. Next case, copper sulfide. Copper sulfide again 2x, sulfur is also -2, is equal to 0. So again x is turning out to be 1. So x is turning out to be 1. Okay. So here also my oxidation state is 1. Now in the next case, copper, Cu, this here obviously it's a neutral atom. Neutral atoms always have the oxidation state of 0. Alright, so this is what we have got for copper. Okay. Now let us find the oxidation states for oxygen and sulfur as well. Okay, we have got the oxidation state for copper. We will now like to find the oxidation state for sulfur and oxygen as well. So for sulfur, let's do in the first case. So Cu2S, you already know this is copper. Copper oxidation state has been 1. So 2 into 1 plus x is equal to 0. So x is equal to -2. So here your sulfur oxidation state is -2. Now for oxygen, again this will be same, 2 and it will become -2 only. So oxygen is -2. Now here we see for sulfur, here the oxidation state for sulfur will become 4. X into oxygen is -2, so -2 into 2 is -4, x plus -4 is equal to 0, so x is equal to 4. So for sulfur the oxidation state here becomes +4, and for oxygen this is going to be 4 plus 2x is equal to 0, so 2x is equal to -4, so x is equal to -2, so it's going to be -2. Okay, these are all the oxidation states we have found. Okay, now you should know that whenever your oxidation state or oxidation number increases, it's an oxidation reaction, and when the oxidation number reduces, it is a reduction reaction. Okay, so in this particular case for copper, we can see that the oxidation number for copper from 1 it turned out to be 0. So for copper your oxidation number changed from 1 to 0, that means it's reduced. So copper, that means, has been reduced. Okay, so we'll write it with the R, copper has been reduced. Alright, now let us check the same for oxygen. In oxygen, the oxidation state has been -2 everywhere. Oxygen, it has been -2 everywhere, so there is no effect on oxygen. Oxygen has neither been oxidized, oxygen has neither been reduced. So oxygen has had no effect, so we will not consider oxygen. Let's see sulfur now. For sulfur, the oxidation state has been -2 and then it has gone to +4. That means it has increased, and when oxidation state increases, that means sulfur has been oxidized. Because the oxidation state of sulfur has increased from -2 to +4, that means sulfur has been oxidized. So that means in this above reaction, your sulfur has been oxidized, whereas copper has been reduced. Now talking about the so that's why definitely now simultaneous oxidation and reduction has taken place, so this reaction can be proved as a redox reaction easily. Now next thing is the oxidant and the reductant. So oxidant has undergone reduction. Okay, oxidant means it has undergone reduction. So which substance has undergone reduction? Let's see which substance has undergone reduction here. Copper has been undergoing reduction. Okay, so this copper sulfide, when you see this copper sulfide will be your reductant in this case. Why will it be the reductant? Because copper sulfide, in which the sulfur has gone under oxidation. Okay, copper has been conserved, but the sulfur has gone under drastic oxidation in the case of copper sulfide. Okay, and the substance which undergoes oxidation is called the reducing agent. So that's why copper sulfide is the reductant. And now you can easily understand, if one substance is a reductant, the other one definitely will be the oxidant. So this is your oxidant. This is to be remembered that reductant will bring about reduction but itself get oxidized, whereas the oxidizing agent or the oxidant will itself get reduced but will bring about oxidation. Okay, this is something which is common in all the oxidizing and reducing agent based questions. Okay, which you should know. So definitely all the redox reactions, oxidizing agent, reducing agent, we can easily calculate using the oxidation number method, in which change in oxidation state can help us to understand whether a substance has undergone oxidation or reduction. Next question. Which hybrid orbitals are used by carbon in the following compounds? Okay, so for hybridization, just remember this, that whenever you have only sigma bonds, okay, that means no double bond, the hybridization is sp3, because carbon's covalency is 4. Carbon can only accommodate 4, and 4 orbitals may without any pi bond, it is sp3. Okay, when there is one pi bond, that means there are three use. Pi is a double bond, only 3 bondings are done, that means it's an sp2. And when there are 2 pi bonds, then there is an sp, because only 2 bonds are done. 2 pi bonds means it's a triple bond. Okay, if I talk about sp2 means this, 1 pi bond and 1 sigma bond to satisfy 2 sigma bonds to satisfy carbon. Whereas when I talk about sp means there has been a triple bond formation, and that triple bond will be taken as one orbital overlap, and from that we have to conclude the bonding. Okay, so that's how you will do hybridization. So let's take the first part. The first part is CH3, which is simple ethane. Now here you can see, expanding the structure, not the page, expanding the structure, you can see easily that this has this kind of a structure. Okay, these are all your hydrogens, this kind of a structure. So there is only sigma bonds involved, there is no pi bond. That's why you can easily say these are both carbons are sp3, because it's only been sigma bonds which have been used here, pi bonds have not been involved, so it's an sp3. In the second case, now we can see here in the first part of this structure, only sigma bond, 3 hydrogens form a single bond only, so it's only sigma bond, so this will be an sp3. Here you see 1 sigma bond here, 1 hydrogen, this one here, another sigma bond, but here double bond here. That means there's 1 pi bond involved. 1 pi bond means your sp2. Here also this double bond is equally valid to this also, so this is also your sp2. Okay, here again hydrogen, 3 hydrogen just form a single bond, that means 4 sigma bonds, so sp3. Here again 2 hydrogens, sigma bond, 1 oxygen and alcohols forms a sigma bond only, single bond, this is also sp3 only. Okay, it will always be sp3 until and unless a pi bond is formed. When a pi bond forms, then it can be an sp2 or sp, depending on the degree of unsaturation, how many pi bonds, how many unsaturated orbitals are present. Okay, that's how you can calculate the hybridization. This is the trick part. Okay, why is chromium 2 positive oxidizing and manganese 3 positive reducing and manganese 3 positive oxidizing when both have D4 configuration? Alright, first let's write the configuration and then we will understand this. So first, talking about chromium 2 positive. So chromium has the atomic number of 24. Okay, so till 20 the configuration is same, and till 18 you can write it as an argon only. Okay, because argon is still 18, so I'll write it argon. After 18 you have 4s2 first, and then you have 3d10. Okay, then your 3d orbitals are filled. Actually our first 4s is filled because you follow the off-pair principle, 4s is first and then the 3d. How many orbitals, how many electrons are there? 4. After 20 there are 4 electrons, so it will be a 3d4. But it's copper 2 positive, so I have to remove 2 electrons to make it a 2 positive. Now tell me, do I need to remove the 2 electrons from the 3d first or the 4s? Please remember the electrons are removed from the outermost shell, which is the highest n value. The n, principal quantum number, is highest, that will be the shell from which the electrons are removed. Principal quantum number of 4 is higher than 3, so this will get removed, not the 3D. So the configuration of chromium will be, chromium 2 positive will be argon 3d4. 4s will be removed because the one which has a higher n value will remove the electrons first. Okay, so argon 3d4 is going to be my chromium. Okay, now when I talk about reducing, I just told you in the previous question, reducing means it will undergo oxidation. If it's a good reducing agent, it will undergo oxidation easily and its oxidized form will be stable. Okay, oxidation means loss of electron. Okay, so when chromium 2 positive will get oxidized, what will it form? Loss of electron. Loss of electron means it will be more positive, chromium 3 positive. This is the oxidized form. This is the redox couple. Yes, because if it's a reducing agent, it will itself undergo oxidation. So it will form a chromium 3 positive. Alright, now let's see what will chromium 3 positive look like. Chromium 3 positive will look like argon, and just you will remove from the 3d4 now, it will become 3d3. And for this you need a bit of knowledge about your complex compounds. You should know that when you have a 3d3, just try to understand this. When you have a 3d3, your configuration will be like this: 1, 2, 3. This is your 3d3. Okay, and this for chromium will be stable because this is a T2g orbital. The first 3d orbitals are T2g, the second 2d orbitals are Eg. This you have to know your complex compounds, and only you will be able to understand this question. And you can see that T2g orbitals have maximum capacity of 6 electron, 1 orbital for 2, so 3 for 6, and they are half filled. So these are half filled. Half filled. And you already know half filled and fully filled subshells have extra stability. So this is extra stable. And that is why this happens. The thing to understand is that whenever a substance is reducing, that means its oxidized form will be very stable. So this copper, after getting chromium from chromium 2 positive to chromium 3 positive, will become stable because its T2g is half filled, and half filled is extra stable. Okay, that's the thing. For manganese, I'll do it a little quickly because I've given you a detailed explanation for chromium. Manganese 3 positive. Let's draw the configuration: argon 4s2 and 3d5. Why 3d5? Because manganese is, your atomic number is 25 for manganese. So argon 4s2 3d5 will be the configuration for manganese. Now remove 3 electrons from here, 2 gone and then 1 gone from here. Argon 3d4. Okay, 3 electrons are removed. Now this is going to be oxidizing. This board is a little trouble making today, no problem. Now this is undergoing oxidizing. Okay, that means this will undergo reduction. If something is an oxidizing agent, that means it will undergo reduction itself. Reduction is a gain of electron. So this now manganese, when it will be from manganese 3 positive, after gaining an electron, it will become 2 positive. Definitely the positivity will reduce if it is 3 positive to 2 positive, if it's gaining an electron. What else 2 positive going to be after gain an electron? This is going to be 3d5. And 3d5, d5 is half filled. D has maximum of 10. This is half filled. And half filled obviously means extra stable. The thing you need to understand here is fully filled and half filled subshells offer extra stability. So when manganese, which is oxidizing, will undergo reduction, oxidizing agent reduces, it will gain an electron, it will get 3d5 configuration. 3d5 definitely is half filled. This is your D subshell. 3d5 will be like this. 5 electrons are filled. This is half filled and extremely stable. So that's why manganese is oxidizing. Initially both had a D4 configuration, but the things changed after their oxidation and reduction, and they went into a different stability. Okay, that's it from this question. Let's move to the next one. Alright, first I'll discuss this one, then I'll do the previous few questions. Arrange the following compounds in increasing order of their acid strength. Okay, now for acid strength, remember one thing: your aromatic compounds. For acid strength, aromatic compounds have an electron withdrawing effect. In acidity, what we know is oxygen and hydrogen are here. we need to withdraw the electron from oxygen, so that oxygen withdraws it from hydrogen and hydrogen is released. Acids are hydrogen donors, proton donors. So my aim in acid is to remove an hydrogen, which I can only do if I polarize the bond or I remove the oxygen electrons, then only I'll be able to polarize the hydrogen. Okay. Aromatic compounds have an electron withdrawing effect. Benzene ring withdraws electrons, so this will make acidity better. Whereas an aliphatic compound, the R group, it will give the electrons, that will reduce my acidity in an organic compound. So the aromatic compound is more acidic than aliphatic or straight chain compounds. In aromatic, remember, if I have substituents like nitro, if I have substituents like halogens, we can write halogens by X, they will increase the acidity. Why? Because they are electron withdrawing. Okay, they have a minus I effect, they are electron withdrawing, so they are called EWGs. You should learn this only, which groups are electron withdrawing, which are not electron withdrawing, which are electron donating. So these will increase the acidity. Whereas groups like methyl, R groups, they will decrease the acidity because they are electron donors, they have a plus I effect. Okay, so electron withdrawing groups increase the acidic character, whereas electron donating groups decrease the acidic character in an aromatic compound. So let's see this now. And more the number of groups, more will be their effect, obviously. So the first one is propan-1-ol. Propan-1-ol is your aliphatic compound, least acidic. Okay, so first is, let me just write the order here. Okay, I'll state it here only, I'll write it. Propan-1-ol. Then trinitrophenol. Nitro is electron withdrawing, very acidic. 3-nitrophenol, so 1-nitro, moderate acidic. 3,5-dinitro, more acidic, 2 nitros. Phenol, and 4-methylphenol. Methyl is an R group, which is electron donating, it will reduce the acidity. So your next will be 4-methylphenol. Simple phenol, it has no group. And then you have your electron withdrawing groups, the nitro group. These are all very acidic, but more the number of nitro groups, obviously more will be the acidity, because more will be their effect. So then you comes your single nitro, 3-nitrophenol, NP I'm writing. Then your 3,5-DNP, dinitrophenol, and then your 2,4,6 trinitrophenol, most acidic. Okay, because here the nitro groups are maximum, so the electron withdrawing effect will be maximum. The main thing we are talking about here in acidity is the electron withdrawing effect, from which polarizability of the bond will happen and my acidic character will be more. That's what this question discusses. Okay. Alright. So this was part 1 of RICE series episode 1. Okay, we are breaking it into 2 shorter parts to just give a break in this. In the second part of RICE series episode 2, or the episode 1 only, 1 will be of 2 parts. We will discuss these questions. This is a question from coordination compounds. The next question is from P block. This is a very, very important question. Then we have a question from chemical kinetics. Then we have a question from glucose, that is biomolecules, and with that we will wind up. Okay, and we'll add 1 or 2 questions of GOC also in the next part. Okay, the first part was an introduction only to this series, so it's a short part. In the other parts coming up, we'll be taking up at least 10 questions in every episode, and you'll be able to crack them easily. Okay, these questions I'm not skipping. I'm going to be taking them up in part 2 of the video, because this is the first video. I thought this should not be too lengthy, it should be very simple. Part 2 will be very lengthy, and not very lengthy actually, but part 2 will be at least having 10 questions, in which we'll be discussing these questions plus some more questions which I have for you. Okay, so that's it from this first video. I just wanted to keep it a bit short. In the next video we'll cover up a lot more. Thank you so much. Please subscribe the channel, and there's another series called Evolution which is going on for NEET Bio PYQs, and daily dose of videos from random topics are also coming of all the subjects, so please watch them and subscribe the channel as well. Thank you so much.